everyone, and welcome back to my channel and to another video. I'm currently filming this on Boxing Day, so Merry Christmas. If you celebrate Christmas, I hope you had a lovely time with your family and friends and got lots of great gifts, and I hope you had a lovely time. But as you can see from the title of the video, I'm going to be talking you through my top 10 books of 2023. This was really difficult to whittle down to just a top 10 because I read a lot of really good books this year, and I'm really happy with all the books that I read, and I've definitely found some new favourites that I can't wait to talk to you guys about. And I do have some honorary mentions that didn't make the top 10. It's not a top 10 as such, it's just the 10 books that I loved the most throughout this year. But definitely my favourite book of the year is definitely my top book of the year. And yeah, without further ado, let's just get straight on with the video and into my top 10 books of 2023. Okay guys, so I'm going to just kick off with some honorary mentions. I have 3 honorary mentions that didn't quite make my top 10, but I absolutely adored these books nonetheless, and I wanted to mention them in this video. So I wanted to at least get one middle grade book on here because I, if you don't know, run the Middle Grade Magic Book Club, where we read one middle grade book every month, and I have definitely found a new middle grade favourite for me this year. And this book was, I think it was our April pick, I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah, so we read this in April. It's the start of a new middle grade series, and I just absolutely fell in love with this book and the world, and I ended up giving it a 5-star. It's the first middle grade magic book that I've given 5 stars to, and I just absolutely loved it. Loved it so much, had such a great time. But the book in question is Skandar and the Unicorn Thief by A.F. Stedman. This is a fantasy middle grade, and it definitely gives off Percy Jackson vibes. If you love the Percy Jackson series, very similar vibes. But we follow the main character, Skandar, who wants to be a unicorn rider, and he gets to go to the unicorn rider training academy. And the students there bond with unicorns, but then the villain of the story is out to try and kill all the unicorns, and Skandar and his friends that he makes it has to try and figure out who the person is that is wanting to kill all the unicorns. And it's just such a really fun time. But Skandar, it was just such a fun time, and I just absolutely love this. I love the characters and the idea of the unicorn school where they were all training and you could bond with a unicorn. It kind of gave me How to Train Your Dragon vibes, if you've seen those movies. But it was just a really fun time, and yeah, I would definitely recommend it if you loved Percy Jackson. How to Train Your Dragon, it's definitely got those vibes, and I got the very pretty Waterstones edition, and I've also got the second book to match as well, and I've pre-ordered book 3, which I think is coming out in 2024. But it's just so beautiful, and it's such a fun time, and I just wanted to mention at least one middle grade book on my list. But yeah, if you haven't read Skandar and Unicorn Thief, please go and check out. It is such a fun time. It's great for a readathon. It just reads so quickly, and yeah, I would definitely 100% recommend this one. Okay guys, so my second honorary mention that I know a lot of people have read this book and absolutely loved it this year, and I don't have a physical copy to hand because I'm getting special editions of said book, so I'm just going to put a picture up on the screen. But if you haven't guessed it by now, this book it was just all over BookTube, Book Talk, everywhere this year, and I was definitely one of those people that absolutely adored this book this year. But the book in question is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This was just such a good time. I really loved this book. If you haven't read Fourth Wing yet, it follows dragon riders and our main character Violet, who is an awesome main character. She has brittle bones, so she's quite small in size, but her determination, her drive is just out of this world. It is just so good. So Violet, there are different quadrants in this world. So you have the Dragon Riders quadrant, and then you have the Scribe quadrant, which is where our main character Violet is wanting to go to. She's trained all her life to be a scribe, but her mother, who was a very high-ranking dragon rider, forces her to join the Dragon Riders quadrant, where against her will, basically, she doesn't want to go, but she ends up going into the Dragon Riders quadrant. And there are a lot of people that think that she shouldn't be part of the Dragon Rider Squadron because she's brittle bone, she's very, very small and weak, and she's not going to last very long in there. And there are trials to become a Dragon Rider that are quite brutal and intense, and at the end of it, a rider can bond with a dragon. And Violet, her determination, as I've said, her will to like just prove everyone wrong, and she's just amazing character. She's definitely one of my favourite characters that I've read from this year. She's just so good. There is enemies to lovers romance in there. Her best friend is in the Dragon Rider Squadron, and he means very, very well, but he wants to try and persuade her to get out of the Dragon Rider Squadron because he doesn't think that she's going to last long in there, and it's just so good. And I haven't read Iron Flame yet, which is book 2, but as I've said, I pre-ordered both the special editions from Fairy Loot, so I'm going to do a reread of Fourth Wing and then move on to Iron Flame in 2024, and I'm so excited for Iron Flame. I just can't wait. But of course I had to mention Fourth Wing on here. It's definitely one of the best books that I've read this year for sure, and I can't wait to continue on with the series. It was just so good. So if you haven't read Fourth Wing yet, please pick it up. I would 100% recommend it for sure. Okay guys, and my final honorary mention that I want to put in this video is a book that I did not see coming at all this year, and I just absolutely fell in love with this book. I read it in one sitting and gave it 5 stars, and it was totally out of my comfort zone. And it's definitely an author that I'm definitely going to read more of in the future, definitely in 2024. But the book in question is Arrietty by Abby Davis. I heard about Arrietty from my lovely friend Barb from Barb's Bookland. She did an author interview with Abby herself, and it was just hearing her talking about the book and how amazing, and all the positive things that I'd heard from Barb and my lovely friend Rebecca. They both got arcs of the book and they were just raving about it. So of course I had to pick up the book myself, and I'm so glad that I did. It was just a thriller. Like, I was relatively new to thrillers, I hadn't read a lot of them, but this thriller was just chef's kiss. It was just so good and different to anything that I'd ever read before. So in Arrietty we followed the main character, Arrietty, who discovers that her mum has gone missing, and she has her young brother and her dad, and the mum has gone missing, and she's wondered for years and years what happened to her mum, and she thinks her dad knows a lot more than what he's letting on. And it's isolated setting, family drama and secrets, and the twists and the turns and the ending you do not see coming at all. Obviously no spoilers whatsoever. I would just go and pick up the book. Don't read too much into it, just go into it, which is what I did. I didn't know what was going to happen, and I'm so glad that I did it that way. But it was just so good. Abby Davis's writing is just so fast paced, but it's easy to understand and get through, and it's just the twists, and it's just different to anything that I've ever read before. So if you haven't read anything from Abby Davis, please go and try her books. I've read her #1 fan since then, which is, I think, is her most recent, one of her most recent releases, which was very similar to Misery by Stephen King. If you enjoyed that, that was really good as well, and I gave that one 5 stars. So I think Abby Davis in 2024 is definitely going to be a new favourite thriller author for me, and I've just, Arrietty, it was just so good. So if you haven't read this thriller, please go and pick it up, and I'll leave a link to Barb's channel in the box down below, and if I can find the link to the chat with Abby Davis herself, I'll put that down there as well if you wanted to check that out. But yeah, Abby Davis is definitely going to be a new thriller author for me, that I'm definitely going to read more of her books in 2024. And yeah, it was just 100% such a good time. Really enjoyed it. Okay guys, so I'm now going to finally move on to my top 10 books of 2023. As I mentioned, it was really difficult to whittle down to a top 10 because I read so many great books this year, but I finally settled on a top 10 and I'm really happy with what I've picked out for this. So without further ado, we'll just crack on with number 10. And this book, it's definitely, again, another autobiography author for me, and I can't wait to read more books from him in the future. But the book in question is In the Lives of Puppets by T.G. Klune. This was his 2023 release, and I got the stunning Waterstones edition with these amazing sprayed edges, and it's just so beautiful. But if you don't know, T.J. Klune wrote The House in the Cerulean Sea and Under the Whispering Door, which I loved both of those as well. But in this one we follow the main character Victor, and he has 3 robots. It's a found family story, and it's very much inspired by Swiss Family Robinson. Victor and his 3 robots, they live out in the woods in tree houses, and one day one of the robots finds an android in a junkyard, and he brings it home to repair it, and by accident the android sets off a signal to these and other androids that hunt robots, and one of the family robots gets taken away, and Victor and the robots and the android have to go on a journey to rescue their family member, and it's just so wholesome and lovely. And I love T.J. Klune's books because he's got so much humour in his books. Like some of the characters, some of the one-liners are just so funny. I think it was, I can't remember the character's name, which is terrible. Yeah, this sadistic nurse machine, Miss Nurse Ratched, I think she was called. She was just absolutely hilarious, and yeah, it was just so lovely and wholesome. And there, as always with T.J. Klune's books, there's LGBTQ plus romance in here, which again is really important to have in books nowadays, and I would 100% recommend this if you want something that's like really cosy, found family, with a bit of humour in there and romance in there, and it was just so lovely. And I would definitely do a reread of this one for sure, but it was just, it was so wholesome and lovely. And yeah, I would definitely really 100% recommend this one, and I will definitely be reading more from T.J. Klune in the future. I still have Wolfsong to read, that's his other very popular series in the Extraordinaries as well, but I think this one for me for sure has definitely been my favourite standalone from T.J. Klune, and yeah, I can't wait to read what he puts out in the future. And again, I just had such a great time with this book and I absolutely loved it. Okay guys, so at number 9 we have a gothic romance book, which I did give it a 4-star initially, but I haven't stopped thinking about the book since I've read it, which I definitely think means I really should include it in my top 10. But the book in question is Belladonna by Adelaide Grace. This is a gothic romance book, and we follow the main character Signa, who death has followed her through her whole life. Death is the main character, and there's murder mystery going on, and there's romance in here. And I hadn't read anything by Adelaide Grace at this point until I read Belladonna, but I just loved the atmosphere in here, like the gothic romance atmosphere, and I definitely think gothic romance is definitely one of my favourite genres, and I've read a few like gothic inspired books since then, and I always have such a great time with this. And I have since then read Foxglove, which is a sequel, and I gave it 4 stars again, so I can't wait to continue on with this series. But I just loved the writing in here. It's very lyrical and descriptive, and I think the romance, I think if I remember, there was a love triangle in here which I quite enjoyed. I know a lot of people don't like that, but I quite like it, and I just thought it was really unique to have death as a main character in here, which I quite liked. And the atmosphere again was just really good, and I flew through this book really quickly. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. So if you haven't picked up Belladonna and you like gothic romance, I would definitely 100% recommend this one. And I can't wait for Wisteria, which is book 3, and I think which comes out in August next year. So I will definitely be picking up a copy of that book when that comes out. But yeah, I would definitely recommend Belladonna if you love anything like gothic and you enjoy books that have really great atmosphere. And yeah, it was just really good, and that's why it's number 9 in my top 10. Okay guys, so moving on to number 8 in my top 10. I, this year, started to read the Bridgerton series by Julia Quinn. I'm a massive Bridgerton fan. I love the TV shows so much. It's definitely one of my favourite shows that I've watched in a while. And I wanted to read the actual books that the show is based on. So I started to read the Bridgerton series by Julia Quinn. And overall, I had a really great time with the series. But I had to pick my favourite out of the series, which was the only 5-star in that series, and that was The Viscount Who Loved Me by Julia Quinn. This is the gorgeous Illumicrate edition that I got, the Illumicrate set, fairly recently, and it's just the most beautiful, one of the most beautiful books that I've ever owned, with this bee design, and oh, it's just so beautiful. And if I open up the full book, it looks like this, which is so beautiful. So if you've never read the Bridgerton series, they are Regency romances, and it follows the Bridgerton family, the different siblings in the family, and it's basically love stories between a Bridgerton family member and the main character, and they're really, really quick, easy. They're not like the most amazing piece of literature in the world, but they are really quick reads, and I'm getting into Regency romance. I think this is a great place to start if you want to try Regency romance. But in this one, which is The Viscount Who Loved Me, we follow Anthony Bridgerton, who's the oldest sibling, and he is basically a bachelor, and he wants to not marry for love. He just wants a marriage of convenience, really. He wants his future bride to be the head of the household and to be there for bathing children, that kind of thing. Very typical kind of male attitudes back in Regency times. And he ends up meeting two sisters, Kate and Edwina, and he starts off to pursue Edwina, and he wants to try and marry Edwina, but her sister Kate really doesn't like him. She really, really doesn't like him, and this is basically enemies to lovers romance, which is my favourite trope in romance novels. And Anthony and Kate end up really hating each other, but then an event happens where they start to fall for each other, and it's so good, and it's done even better in the TV show, and season 2 is my favourite in the series, and I'm so excited for season 3 because we've got dates for it coming out in May next year, and I'm so excited for it. But I want to mention, this is my top 10, so if you wanted to try Regency romance, I would definitely recommend starting off with the Bridgerton series, because they are very easy to read, very quick to get through, and yeah, they're just a really, really fun time. So I had to include one of the Bridgerton books in my top 10 for this year, and I've had a really great time reading the series. I definitely would like to do a reread at some point for sure, but yeah, so I would 100% recommend Bridgerton if you want to try Regency romance for sure. Okay guys, so for my number 7 pick, I read this during one of Steph's, from Steph Love's Patreon readathons. We did the F1 readathon throughout this whole year, and in November we did a week-long round where we had to read special edition books, and I was really glad that I got to read this book during that readathon, because I flew through it in one sitting and I ended up giving it a 5-star, and I absolutely loved it. Really, really enjoyed it. But the book in question is The Forest Grimm by Catherine Purdy. This was the YA October pick, I think. But it was just, I really, really enjoyed this one. I don't read a lot of YA fantasy that often, but this was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. So we follow our two main characters, Clara and Axel, and they live in a world where their village is cursed because this village has a spell book, which is called the Book of Fortunes, where people can write what they want to wish for in this book, and the book helps them to achieve that wish. But someone uses the book for bad, and the forest basically takes the book away, and the village is cursed, and anyone that tries to go into the forest to retrieve the Book of Fortunes never ends up coming out. And Clara and Axel, they both have loved ones that are trapped in this forest. So Clara's mother has been lost in this forest for years and years, and then her childhood friend Axel was betrothed to a girl called Ella, and she was picked to go into the forest to retrieve the book, and she never came back out, and he's always wanted to go in and find her. So both of them end up going into the forest to try and find the Book of Fortunes, and also to rescue their loved ones that are in there. And I really, really enjoyed this. I love the atmosphere in this book. The writing style was really, really easy to read, and I loved the Grimm's fairy tale elements in here. There are fairy tale characters in here, and I love the way that Catherine Purdy put a darker twist on them, and I just loved there's friends to lovers romance in here, which I really enjoyed. There's also a bit of tarot in here as well, which I quite liked, that has fairy tale kind of themes around it. And I just think this edition is just so beautiful, and it's got the most stunning foiling on the naked hardback as well. And it was a really good time. I really enjoyed it because I'd never read anything by Catherine Purdy before, but I would be really intrigued to go back and read some of her backlist stuff. And I think this will be a series. I think there is a second book coming out, so I will 100% pick up the second book whenever that one comes out. But I just really enjoyed it. It was a really fun, quick read that was like full of dark, atmospheric writing and very descriptive writing of the forest stuff. And the twist at the end in here I really enjoyed. And yeah, I definitely will continue on with the series whenever the second book comes out. I don't know if it's already out or not, but it was just so it was so good and I really enjoyed it, and I would definitely recommend. I know it's maybe had a bit of a mixed reviews on Goodreads, but overall I really enjoyed it and gave it 5 stars, and I can't wait to read the sequel to this whenever that one comes out. But I would 100% pick this up if you love fairy tale retellings, Grimm's fairy tales, dark atmospheric writing, friends, lovers. Yeah, it was a really good time, and I'm really happy to have it on my top 10 list. Okay guys, so we're nearly at my top 5 books for 2023, but before that I wanted to mention my pick for number 6 in this list. I read this back in August and I just adored this book and the world so much, and I gave it 5 stars again, so I had to include it on this list. But it's by one of my favourite authors that I've ever read from. It's the start of a brand new series and I can't wait to read more in this series, and it was just chef's kiss amazing. But the book in question is The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi by Sharon Chakraborty, or Essie Chakraborty if you know her from the Daevabad trilogy, which is the City of Brass, Kingdom of Copper, Empire of Gold series. Yeah, this was just amazing. It was so good. So we follow an older character called Amina Al-Sarafi, and she was one of the most famous pirates in this world. It's set in the same world as the Daevabad trilogy, but it's a pirate story. We follow, as I've mentioned, Amina. She's an older woman. She has a family. She was a very successful pirate captain, and she went on all these adventures, but now she's semi-retired with her family. But an opportunity comes up where she could make a lot of money for her family by rescuing a daughter of one of her former crewmates who's been kidnapped, and she takes the opportunity to go on this kind of last mission, and she has to rally up her old crew and get her old ship back. And I love like books that are set at sea, pirate stories, and it just put me in the mood of like Pirates of the Caribbean if you love those movies, which I absolutely adore those movies. But it was just so good, and it's kind of told in a way where Amina's telling her story, but she's getting interviewed by a character, Jamal, I think he's called, and he's kind of interviewing her and she's telling all of her adventure stories, and I just thought it was a really cool way to tell the story, and I can't wait for more books in the series. And I managed to get the amazing Fairy Loot edition, which is one of the most beautiful books I've ever owned in my life, and it is just so beautiful, and it's just like gold foiled everywhere, like amazing map that looks like this, absolutely gorgeous, and then even more foiling on the naked hardback as well. So if you haven't read Amina Al-Sarafi yet, I would 100% recommend it as like a summer read, because I think it's perfect to read during the summer, like pirates and water based stories, and it was just such a good time. And again, I think Amina is definitely one of my favourite characters in this year, because I loved the fact that she was an older character, she was a mother, she had kids, she had a family, and she's definitely had a lot of life experiences, which I think not a lot of fantasy characters are older women. Most of the time, if you get a fantasy like this, they are like in their early 20s, but Amina's lived a little bit, which I really like. So I can't wait to read more like books in this series. I don't know when Sharon Chakraborty will write anymore, but I'm really excited to continue on with this series. But yeah, Amina Al-Sarafi definitely deserves a place on my top 10 list for sure. Okay guys, so we have finally reached my top 5 in this list, and to kick off with my pick for my number 5 spot, this is a thriller, which I never expected to get any thrillers on the list, but I have totally branched into a lot more thrillers this year, thanks to, again, Barb from Barb's Bookland. She has so many thriller recommendations, so again, I will leave her channel down below. But I also saw Steph from Steph Loves reading this book, and she absolutely loved it and gave it 5 stars, so I had to pick it up myself, and I read it in pretty much in one sitting and gave it 5 stars, and it's definitely one of the best thrillers that I've ever read, and I will definitely pick up more from this author in the future. But the book in question is Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. This book was mental. The plot was just so different to anything I've ever read before. So we follow a woman who is waiting for her son to come back home, and for whatever reason she sees her son stabbing this random man outside her house, and she doesn't know why her son has killed this man, and ends up going down to the police station with them. Her husband goes with her, and she doesn't know what is going on. And then she wakes up the next day and she goes downstairs to check on her son if he's okay, and saying, we were down at the police station last night. And her son is like, what are you talking about? We weren't at the police station last night. And she realises that she's actually gone back a day. So there's time travelling, kind of like time travelling in here. So you follow this mother on this kind of journey to figure out why her son kills this young man. And she goes back and back and back, and we also get a POV from a police officer, I think, as well, and it's like how the two things come together. So yeah, so how like the two kind of POVs and the stories that come together, it's just so well done. But it's like how she goes back, so she starts to go back a day, and then like 4 days, and then it's like she goes back a week, and then it's months, and you're just like, how far is this going to go back? And it's just so unique, and I really enjoyed it. So I would love to pick up more from Gillian McAllister in the future. This is definitely one of the best thrillers that I've read so far this year, and I've read a lot of really good thrillers, but this one was just such a good time. Read it in one sitting and I had no idea where it was going, and the twists and the reveals and stuff were just amazing. So this definitely deserves a place on my top 10 list for sure. So if you haven't read anything by Gillian McAllister, especially this book, please go and pick it up. You will not be disappointed. It's definitely like a good summer thriller read. You could definitely take it as a holiday read and just sit and just read it in one sitting. It was like that good. Oh, it was just absolutely amazing. So how do you stop a murder when it's already happened? So like, I just loved that premise so much because it's so different to anything that I've ever read before. And yeah, I would 100% recommend this book if you've never read anything by Gillian McAllister before. So please go and pick this book up for sure. Okay guys, so moving on to my pick for my number 4 spot. I became obsessed with the Chestnut Spring series by Elsie Silver this year, and I've had such a really good time reading all these books in the series. But my favourite book in the whole series, which got 5 stars, if you haven't guessed, was Heartless by Elsie Silver. This is book 2 in the Chestnut Spring series, and we follow the Eaton family. It's cowboy romances. They own like a ranch kind of thing, and it's basically loves romances between the Eaton family members and the main character, and it's just such a good time. But this one in particular was my absolute favourite. So we follow Cade Eaton, who is the oldest sibling, and Willa, who is the best friend of Summer, who we met in Flawless, which was Summer and Rhett's story. So we follow them two, and it's basically a single dad and nanny romance, and let me tell you, this book was just chef's kiss. It was so good. So as I said, we follow Cade and Willa, and Cade is looking for a nanny for his 5-year-old son, and Summer suggests Willa because she's out of work at the moment because her horse has had an accident, and they end up meeting in a coffee shop, and it's quite an embarrassing encounter in a coffee shop, and then they actually meet again when Summer introduces Willa to Cade, and he's just like, nope, absolutely not, she's not being my son's nanny. But then she eventually gets the job because there's no one else available, and it's just a basically steamy romance between the two of them, and it was just so good. But then we've also got the plot of Cade having to deal with his ex-wife as well, and he's got a lot of anxiety over that, and then Willa's got a lot of personal anxiety with herself because she doesn't feel she's good enough and she's not making any progress in her life, and I just think the two of them were just absolutely perfect for each other, and I had such a great time reading this book. So I will definitely be doing a reread of this whole series for sure because it was just so good. If you haven't picked up the Chestnut Spring series, I mean, if you didn't love Flawless, but please read Heartless, because it was just so good, and that's why this is on my top 10 list for this year. I just absolutely adored it, and I'm definitely finding what kind of romances I love, like steamy cowboy romances definitely could be my thing, and it was just, oh, it was so good. I love this book so much. So if you haven't read the Chestnut Spring series, please go and pick it up for sure. Okay guys, so we have finally made it to my top 3 books of 2023. Now, any one of these books could have been in the top spot, to be honest, because it was really difficult to pick my number 1 book, but all 3 of these books could definitely have been in my top, like my top spot book for sure. But to start off with my book that is in 3rd place, if you haven't guessed, it is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I adored this book. It was just so good, and this is the absolutely stunning Fairy Loot edition, and I just absolutely love it so much. It's definitely one of the most beautiful books I own, and I just absolutely adore it. So this follows 2 rival journalists, Iris and Roman, and it's kind of got like a historical World War One kind of vibe to it, but there's a war brewing with the gods, so it's got a fantasy kind of element in there. So we follow these 2 rival journalists, and Iris's brother has been drafted to fight in the war, and she has been writing letters to him, so she's having to look after her mum, who's become dependent on alcohol, so she's had to basically run the house while her brother is fighting off in the war. And she's been writing letters to her brother, but they haven't been going to him. They've been going to Roman, who is a rival journalist that she works with at the paper, and they basically start to fall in love through the writing of the letters, and it's just so beautiful. And the twist at the end I didn't see coming at all, and I can't wait to pick up Ruthless Vows. So I'm hoping to get a match-in Fairy Loot edition for this, because the sale is next year, I think. But it was just so good. The writing in here was just really lyrical and beautiful, and I loved the World War One kind of historical kind of element in here, but it was more of like a war with the gods. So we had kind of mythology, fantasy elements in there, which I really liked, and it was just really good. And I liked the romance between Iris and Roman, because I love enemies to lovers romance, but I think the way it was done in this was really different, because if it was done through the letters, because each of them didn't know who the other one was, and I really liked that. And yeah, it was just such a good time. So if you haven't read Divine Rivals, please go and pick this book up. You will not be disappointed. I mean, it's maybe a Marmite book, you either love it or you hate it, but I absolutely love this book, and I can't wait to continue on with the series. And yeah, this edition book, it was just so beautiful, and I absolutely loved it. Okay guys, so we have finally made it to my top 2 books for 2023, and it was really difficult to pick my top one. And the book in 2nd place, which was a very close, but I still absolutely love this book this year nonetheless, and this was a totally unexpected read for me, because I'm such a wimp when it comes to horror. And if you haven't guessed it, the book in question is How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. Yeah, I absolutely loved this book. I read it for, yeah, so I think I read it at the start of the year, I think it came out. And then I've actually done a reread of it since for Camp Crystal Lake, which was Barb's readathon that she did in October. So I've read it twice this year, but both times I absolutely adored it. So in this we follow 2 estranged siblings, Louise and Mark, and both of their parents have died in a car crash, and they have to come together to sell their mum and dad's house. And their mum had an obsession with making puppets and dolls, so there are a lot of creepy dolls and puppets in this house, and the house basically doesn't want to be sold, and there's a lot of haunting and creepy stuff with the puppets. There's one puppet in particular called Pumpkin, I think he's called. Pudkin? Yeah. So, and there's a lot of creepy horror kind of puppet stuff in here, and then it's like you get a backstory into Louise and Mark's family as well, and I really liked the sibling relationship, like how kind of broken it was, but then how they had to come together to basically fight what was going on in this house. And it was just, it's the book, I would just say in one word, is mental. Absolutely mental, and the twists and stuff towards the end of it I didn't see coming at all. And I definitely think if you want to try Grady Hendrix, I would definitely recommend this one. His horror is very, very campy and quite silly, and he takes a mickey out of a lot of like horror kind of tropes and things. So if you're not a big fan of horror but you want to try it, Grady Hendrix's books, I think are a great place to start, because they're not too, I mean, they are scary, but they're not too scary. But I definitely will recommend this book to everybody that wants to try horror for sure, and I can't wait to read more from him in the future. I have a couple of his backlist still left to read because I've read all of his books since then, and I just absolutely love them. But House Sell Haunted House just missed out on the top spot, but it's definitely very, very close to being my favourite book of the year this year. But yeah, I absolutely loved it. Okay guys, so we finally reached my number one book and my favourite book of the year for 2023. Now, this book was written by probably one of my favourite authors that I've ever read from, and it's totally different to anything that she's ever written before, and I was really worried that I was going to really not enjoy it, but I've read the book in one sitting. I gave it 5 stars. It was so good, and I haven't stopped thinking about the book since I read it. So I think this definitely deserves to be my top book of the year for 2023 for sure. But the book in question is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, which I was not expecting to be my top book of the year. This is a psychological thriller, and Rebecca R.F. Kuang wrote The Poppy War and Babel, which are more fantasy based, but this is definitely more of a thriller, and I just think how she can do different genres and still make it an R.F. Kuang book is just absolutely amazing. So in this we follow our main character, June Hayward, who is an author, and she is friends with Athena Liu, who is a very successful author, and June is pretty much basically a nobody. Her books have not sold as well, and at the start of the book Athena tragically dies, but before she died she shared with June her recent manuscripts for a new book that she was going to publish, and Athena dies at the start of the book, and June decides to steal Athena's manuscript and make amendments to it and publish it as her own under a brand new name called Juniper Song. And June is a white woman and Athena was Asian, so she's trying to pass herself off as an Asian author. And the book was about Asian war history, I think it was, if I remember correctly. And yeah, the book was just mental. Absolutely mental. So when Athena dies in a freak accident, June steals her unpublished manuscript and publishes it as her own under the ambiguous name Juniper Song. But as evidence threatens June's stolen success, she discovers exactly how far she will be able to keep what she thinks she deserves. What happens next is entirely everyone else's fault. So yeah, it's just this book deals with a lot of topics such as racism in the publishing industry, white privilege, passing off work as other people's, stealing work, which I'm assuming goes on within the publishing industry quite a lot. And I just think that the book did a really good job of highlighting those things and really making you think as well. And it's you were following June, and it was just you couldn't believe all the choices that she was making, but in kind of a little smidge of sympathy for her, because you kind of understand where she was coming from. She was so desperate to try and make it big, but the way that she went about things was just totally wrong, and it's just you couldn't root for her at all. But there was tiny little smidge where you kind of felt a little bit sorry for her, but it was just so good. And I got the stunning Illumicrate edition because I love the book so much. So yeah, if you haven't read Yellowface and you think it might not be for you, please give it a try, because I think you probably would enjoy it, because it was just so fast paced and it's just so many twists and shocking moments in there. And I think totally this book deserves to be my number one book of the year, because I absolutely adored it so much and I haven't stopped thinking about it since I read it. So yeah, Yellowface is my favourite book of the year for 2023. Okay guys, so that is my top 10 books for 2023, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments down below what your favourite book of 2023 has been and what you are looking forward to reading in 2024, what your first book is going to be for 2024. So yeah, if you liked the video, give me a like and subscribe, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye guys!